So here in Canada and in the United States, obviously many of us are aware of these severe problems we have with drug addictions. So many people on drugs, hard drugs, meth, crack, opiates, things like that, opioids, all of these things ruining people's lives and really destroying them. And what you got to think about with regards to this is if in fact they wanted to stop these things from happening, you've got to know that without any problems they could do so. That is a certainty, because think about this. You've got even many third world countries where they completely cut off drugs. They don't allow any drugs into the country. And, these are not, they don't have sophisticated militaries like the United States do, or obviously, one of the most powerful militaries in the world. And yet somehow we're supposed to believe that Canada and the United States and Australia are not able to stop drugs from getting into the country. It's pretty ridiculous. So you got to know that they allow the drugs to come in, and it's all done through this hierarchical scheme where the people at the top, give the orders, and they want the drugs to get in. They know that the drugs are going to ruin people's lives, of course, cause them to become addicted, destroy them, drive many people absolutely insane. And they look at how drugs have ravaged Western society. Yet in some of these third world countries, they completely stop drugs from coming in, right? And they don't have these, at least these, sure they have other problems which are way worse, but they don't have these types of problems. And so it's all enabled. You got to understand that it's all enabled. They want the drugs in the country. All this nonsense about, George W. Bush years ago, war on drugs, all nonsense. They allow the drugs to come in. And they also, obviously, in order to do this, they have to have people in positions of legal authority who give directions to ensure that the drugs are safely distributed on the streets, and of course enable the violent drug dealers and the people who push the stuff onto those who have become addicted to them. And also, for sure, you can say that, well, no one's forcing these people to do the drugs, right? And that's true. They have a choice, and they're making the choice to take them, right? You can say no one's putting a gun up to their heads and making them take these things. But if the drugs weren't available, then they wouldn't even have that choice to make, right? Because there would be no drugs in the country. So again, we're supposed to believe that in countries like Canada and the United States, first world countries with some of the most sophisticated law enforcement and military apparatuses on the planet, we're supposed to believe that somehow the drugs just find their way in and that they can't stop them from getting in. It's ridiculous. And we got to understand, they allow the drugs to get in. They know that they're going to ruin people's lives. And then they open up, here in Canada and also in the United States, we have these things called safe injection sites. And it's basically just an excuse to allow people to do heroin, basically right out in the open, just shoot up heroin. And even if, going back a few years, to the 1980s, they used to have commercials on TV saying, this is your brain. And they'd crack an egg and they'd say, this is your brain on drugs. Any questions? So even then they had to at least try to portray it as a bad thing. But now, every other disgusting thing that has become so normalized, they're putting up this front, they want you to believe that, they're going to do it anyway, so you might as well just let them do it, instead of trying to stop the drugs from coming in completely. And instead of trying to help the people who are on the drugs by completely getting them off the drugs setting up treatment centers where they can completely get off these things. Instead, we're going to set up more safe injection sites where people can essentially just commit suicide, man. And that's what it is. But again, this is just all part of the total inversion that is going on today. Evil has become what they are trying to portray as good, and good is being portrayed as evil. It's very disturbing. But yeah, the drugs, that's just one of the means of controlling people. And again, it is about control as well, because if you look at how many of the celebrities are also hooked on drugs, it's not by accident that they get them on drugs, because when they get them on drugs, they can control them and have them do whatever they want them to do. And they don't be mistaken. They supply the drugs for the celebs too, and for the musicians and all these people. They supply them, and it is a means of controlling them so that they can use them as puppets. And you see how they use them to push all of the propaganda. So yeah, drugs, just another method of control that these sick psychopaths who control our banks and who unfortunately have such an immense amount of power use to control people. And instead of people out there thinking about this and saying, hold on, why are we opening these sites where people can openly do drugs which are killing them? Instead of asking, why don't we just get them help, get them off the drugs? Instead of doing that, we just shake our heads and say, well, they're going to do it anyway. Well, I mean, that type of attitude, with that type of defeatist attitude, yeah, they are, and they're going to die from it. And a lot of people are going to die because of this disgusting type of apathy, this apathy that is so prevalent with regards to these issues today. So yeah, just a few thoughts on that. Yeah. So if they really wanted to stop the drugs from getting in, they could do so tomorrow if they wanted to. I mean, that's very clear. So it's obvious that they want the drugs in our countries, and they want to use this as a way of debasing and destroying the culture, of bringing people low, and of using it as a means to control people. As I said, it's exactly the same as the way they use the drugs to control the celebrities, who they will give a spot on the world stage. You see how so many of them are on drugs. That's not by accident, of course. To start out, they're probably given, their free supplies. And then after that, of course, they get them hooked. And then, of course, the celebs are also used to push this onto the regular people, because they'll see the drugs being used in movies. They will be used to normalize it to the people who watch these things, and they will be influenced by it, and it will be used as a means to bring these people low, destroy them, and drugs, of course, also being a huge part of the whole depopulation agenda. People slowly killing themselves with these narcotics. That's all part of it. That's part of the agenda. So the elites want the drugs in our countries without a shadow of a doubt, the hard drugs. And they spend a lot of money to ensure that this is enabled. Of course, hard drugs are also often used in many of these occult rituals. It was well known that Aleister Crowley, used a lot of hard drugs in these rituals that he did. You see them openly putting it out there, like you've got Biden's son caught with crack and all of this. And sure, like a lot of 90% of what we see in our media is 100% fake, but I do believe that type of thing is real. I do believe they actually regularly use these hard drugs, especially these people within the occult circles. You'll see a few years back, of course, the Toronto mayor, Rob Ford, smoking crack on camera. That is real. I believe that is real. I believe they do indulge in these narcotics. And again, many of them are involved in the occult, deeply immersed in the occult, and the hard drugs are used within their rituals, of course. And so this is all part of pushing it and normalizing it and impressing it upon the minds of the public and putting it out there just so that people see it all the time. And it's nothing too surprising, and it just becomes commonplace. And of course, it's so sad. You see all these people who are just walking around totally ruined, shadows of their former selves, shadows of who they used to be and who they could have been, all because of these narcotics. And again, it's true, no one's forcing them to do this, right? They are making their own choices. I fully agree with that. But it still doesn't make it any less sad, and I think we should be empathetic towards these people because, again, they're human beings, despite the fact that they've been degraded and brought so low by this evil that has been impressed upon the collective subconscious minds of the public, the slow normalization of these narcotics. And the people who try to make these arguments about, well, if you just legalize the drugs, the crime, and it would take, the crime and the violence would go away. You wouldn't have these dealers in the streets and all this stuff. The crime would go down. Well, okay. Do you really think that these drug dealers are suddenly going to go out and get 9-to-5 jobs if you remove the drugs, or if you regulate it and have the government put it out? Do you think that they're just going to say, well, I guess I'm going to get a job as a Walmart greeter and make minimum wage? No, they're going to find some other violent means, some other criminal way of making money, whether it be robbing people or whatever it would be. So that argument is completely ridiculous, that crime will go down if you legalize drugs. That's just an argument funded by these people who want to destroy and degrade the culture and the people. And libertarianism is just nonsense, of course. It's just this ridiculous thing that was brought about because people were starting to realize how obvious the whole left-right divide and conquer thing is. So it's a preposterous argument, and it is one that these typical, like, Ron Paul sort of people, he's a Freemason, by the way, as well, like most of them. But it's the argument that they would bring forward. Just legalize the drugs, and it's just an excuse to push this evil on the people and to try and degrade the culture further.